I am joined by the Conservative Member of Parliament for Stratford-on-Avon, and of course he was Chancellor of the Exchequer, Chairman of the Conservative Party, an entrepreneur. We might even call you, Nadhim Zahawi, a self-made man, an aspirant.
Bless you.
We were chatting in the break before we came on that you joined this party back in the 80s when it was all about aspiration, wasn't it? It didn't matter what your religion was, what your race was, what your class was. You know, Mrs. Thatcher believed if you had the ability, you worked hard, had a bit of luck, you could do well. You did do rather well, didn't you?
Very much so. I was very lucky and blessed. I remember my mum saying, you know, son, the country that's adopted us has got a grocer's daughter as Prime Minister.
Yeah, because you come from Iraq, haven't you?
Right, absolutely right. Yeah, no, it's remarkable. Actually, in many ways, if you reflect on that and you look at the cabinet today, okay, some of them weren't born when the great lady was Prime Minister, but you look, you know, James Cleverly, Suella Braverman, Kemi Badenoch, even Rishi Sunak himself, right? It is a product of that era of if you're aspirational, if you work hard, you're going to do well in this country.
Yeah, but hang on, Rishi Sunak went to Winchester College and I went to Oxford, and I mean, you know,
I hear you.
I mean, you know, you didn't have those privileges.
No, but
is this party today about aspiration? Is it about small business? Is it about enterprise? Because I can't see it.
So I tell you what I think it's about, and I think Rishi is beginning to cut through on this, that he will make the difficult decisions, long-term decisions, that people will see that he's on their side. I don't think people care what your background is. What they care about is, are you on their side? You know, in their moments of challenge and need, he's on their side. You look at what he did on furlough, right? You look at what he did actually on gas assets in the North Sea. Right. You look at what he did on net zero.
Hang on a second. I mean, we're still taxing gas and oil companies 75%.
But he went up against huge opposition from Labour and others and said, actually, these assets are important to us. Instead of us having to import more gas from abroad, right, we're going to explore our own
not
gas.
Before time, and I grant you that.
Net zero.
I grant you that.
Right. We'll still deliver by 2050, but we don't do things that are going to hurt hard-pressed people in the short term for a soundbite.
Those things make sense to me, and they were pragmatic changes.
100%.
The targets on petrol and diesel cars were completely unachievable. It was pragmatic. But here's my thing. Going around today, and I've been here a couple of days now, 3 days, met a lot of people, and I keep asking people, what's the big message from this conference? Now, I grant you, it might come tomorrow from the Prime Minister, but at the moment, there isn't one, is there?
I disagree. I think what he's really trying to get across is, look, it's not about a soundbite. It's not about, Starmer just sort of really swaying in the wind, whichever way it blows. Flip-flopping. It's about, I will be honest with you, I'll tell you what I think works, and I'm going to deliver against it. Right? And he's beginning, you look at what's happening, his whole stall was to say, we've got to halve inflation, right? We've got to deal with my 5 promises, grow the economy.
Stop the boats. Not much chance of that.
No, it's hard. I was Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster in the Cabinet Office as we was working with Suella. Right? It's hard, but it's beginning to work. Look at what we did with the Albanians. The moment the message got across that you'll be out of here in 24 hours if you come illegally, right? The numbers drop.
Yeah, but
the moment we get those planes off to
loads have come and stayed already, and many have got involved in running drugs gangs in our big cities. I mean, it's not been good.
Well, look, you're right. It's been a difficult one, and it is probably one of the toughest things to deal with. Why? Because we now are in a world where the legislation of old, post Second World War, no longer applies.
So should we just... I'm with you on this.
Yeah.
We understand why the ECHR was set up. We understand British lawyers, and Churchill was very for it, and it was to stop the abuses against the Jews and others. But isn't it time we just left it?
I would much rather see us reform. Why? As I travel around the world, this is a problem for pretty much every major economy in the world. The problem, and the Home Secretary dealt with it today, is that we're in a world now of mass migration, mass movement of humanity, right? So it's a problem for all of us. We have to begin to think about Why is it that we can reform our own legislation to modernise it, right, as needs be, but we can't touch this? I think reform is what it's about.
I think that's exactly what Labour will say next week.
No, they won't.
You see, no, pretty much they will. See, here's the point, Nadhim Zahawi. Most people who vote are busy people. They've got jobs, mortgages, a Labrador, 2.3 kids. They're busy living their lives. And you look back on the great political leaders. Thatcher was one. The ladies not for turning. We knew she was going to stick with where we were, tough though it was. Blair, education. These big, standout, clear messages. We knew. And they're the two great leaders I think we've seen in our lifetimes. But to tell me that Rishi is going to give us good long-term management because he's an intelligent, good chap. People want really clear messages. To say you're going to reform the ECHR, no one believes it.
Well, nothing's off the table for this government.
No.
He will stop the boats. I'm confident he'll manage to do that. He will make sure the economy grows. You're seeing Rishi Sunak at his best when he says, listen, of course I've got to deliver net zero by 2050, but I'm not going to do it by lying to you. I'm going to tell you the truth. We don't have the charging infrastructure.
So
we don't have the
more
grid,
of that.
Right? More of Rishi behaving like an engineer would, i.e. focusing on outcomes. Let me deliver for you and show you. I think that will play well.
Interesting. So do you think there's a possibility of a 92-style shock at the general election?
Absolutely do.
You do?
100%. I'll tell you why, right? And I ran a polling organisation.
YouGov, right. Absolutely.
So if you look at all the research, there isn't a single policy that the voters identify with Keir Starmer and are for it. They're just annoyed with us, right? We've had a difficult time.
They think you're useless.
Right. And we've had a tough year, right? No doubt about that. And there's no point flanneling your viewers and telling them, no, it's all fine, everything is good. It's not. But Keir Starmer is no Tony Blair. What will happen, I think,
that is true.
What will happen is people will start seeing, actually, this guy Rishi, he says stuff that is not always comfortable, but at least tells me the truth, and then he fixes stuff. And I think that will bode well.
And what happens to Nadhim Zahawi? The guy that was the entrepreneur, that became the great success, that rose to big offices, that had a crack at the main job, had a few problems along the way, a few ups and downs, a little bit of financial issues here and there. What do you do next?
Secretary of State for Stratford-on-Avon. When I was selected in 2010, I said to them, my ambition is to be your Secretary of State, to be your champion in Parliament. I'm patron of the Adam Smith Institute, fighting for smaller government, better outcomes, a dynamic economy.
So you're a campaigner?
I'm a campaigner. I've got a campaign that I've been running for the last 6 months. When the time is right, I want to see Rishi and Jeremy Hunt abolish inheritance tax. It is an unfair
That's your latest
tax.
big campaign.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No. Well, I tell you what, a lot of GB viewers will agree with that. Nadhim, thank you.
Yes, you.
Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Now, very odd today, wasn't it? There was speculation. Would I even be allowed inside the building? Even though I was working for GB News, would the Tories be so hostile to me because they resent me for, UKIP and putting candidates up against them in the past? And wow, I've been so welcomed here that actually the Prime Minister didn't say no, that whether I could join the party or not. Now, I've got to tell you folks at home, I've no intention of joining the party at this stage. It would need to reform radically, but do you think they'd have me?
Why not? If you come and join us.
Hesitancy there.
Not at all. If you come and join us,